see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Good morning, good afternoon, good morning. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce Bill Priatko, sitting right here. He grew up in North Braddock. He earned a football scholarship at Pitt, where he attained all American honors. He served in the U.S. Air Force and reached the rank of Major. He was President Eisenhower's honor guard. You'll probably talk about that. He was most famous for being a linebacker for the Packers, the Steelers, and the Cleveland Browns. He spent 4 years as athletic director at Robert Morris University. Bill and his family live in North Huntington. He had 4 children. His wife passed away. He's a very good friend of Dick LeBeau, who used to be the defensive coach for the Steelers, and he's somewhat religious. Let's give a nice warm hand for Bill Priatko.
Thank you, Paul. Good morning, guys. Man, oh man, I'm glad to be back here. Paul asked me again, and I said, hey, Paul, I see many cripples. I said, I've been here before. He said, no, you come on. So I'm grateful to be here. You guys do a wonderful job for the community and the things you get involved with. And it's just a pleasure for me to be out here. Now, I had, right before Christmas, I was at a luncheon with Franco Harris and his wife Dana at Atria's out in McMurray. Now, I know Franco spoke here at one time. He also lives here in Swigley. So I said to Franco and Dana, I said, hey, I got to go out to speak to the men again. And I said, I'm not sure, they don't want to hear some of the things I've said before. And Dana said, well, tell them just a minute or two what you said here at Atria's. And what it was, Jim O'Brien, who was the MC, said, Bill, come on up and give a couple minutes about what you think about Franco Harris. And I got up and I said, hey, everybody knows Franco was a great football player, but a lot of people may not know that he and his wife Dana are wonderful people. They're big-hearted, they're community-oriented, they do a lot of good, they're just wonderful, a wonderful couple, and I'm honored to be their friends. So that's all I said when I got up. So Dana says, well, in a nice way, she said, maybe you can say that to the guys. So Dana, if you're hearing, I said it. Well, as Paul said, I'm not going to give a speech. I just want to share some thoughts. I won't call it a speech with you and all of you. A lot of the things I may say you'll relate to. I'm just centered around being grateful for my life and the blessings that I've had. And as Paul said, I grew up in North Braddock. And I'm grateful I grew up in North Braddock. And a lot of you, I'm sure, feel the same about your hometown. we learned values when we grew up then, not only at home with our parents, our mom and dad, but in school. We learned to respect authority, to respect property, to be kind to one another. We learned that. And I was blessed to play football, basketball, and baseball. A lot of you may not remember this man. He was our coach. He was a man named Johnny Reed. He was a great coach, and we all who played for him can remember, if down on the field, he'd pull up his pants and he'd go, "Boys," he said, "remember, you got to grit your teeth. Not only down here in the field, but you're going to find out in life, you're going to bump into adversity and adversarial relationships, and you got to grit your teeth." And I always remember that. And he always said, "I love coaching football, boys, but I love teaching Sunday school at my Presbyterian church." That's what he said. We never knew that. Well, I was blessed to get a football scholarship to go to Pitt. My mom was grateful because my dad died when I was 5, and she was 29 with 5 kids. She raised all of us, never remarried, and she was so grateful when I got a scholarship to Pitt. Well, I enjoyed my football years at Pitt, the relationships, the bond with guys. Our junior year, Notre Dame lost 1 game. We went up to South Bend and we beat them. That's the only game they lost. And we were proud to beat the Irish up there at South Bend. Joe Schmidt was our team captain. You might remember Joe. He's in the College Hall of Fame, Pro Football Hall of Fame. He and I still talk. We talk every month. He lives up in Detroit. And one of my greatest fame at Pitt, I'm Ukrainian. And I was selected to the Ukrainian All-American team. Man, I was proud, you know. And Mike Ditka, who's my buddy, you know how Mike talks with that voice of his. We were having a dinner after a Pitt spring practice game one April a few years back when Jackie Sherrill was coach. We're sitting around about 40 of us, and I said to Mike, "Mike, you made all the big ones, All-Americans. International News Service, Associated Press, Look Magazine," but I said, "You didn't make the big one." He said, "What do you mean?" You know that voice of his. I said, "You weren't on the Ukrainian All-American team." He said, "You were on there." I said, "Yeah." He said, "How come I wasn't on there?" I said, "You weren't good enough." And Mike, with that voice, he says, "Get out of here." But the thing that I was so grateful for at Pitt, not only playing football, but I was in Air Force ROTC, and that was a blessing, as it turned out. We all were commissioned lieutenants, and we had to go in the Air Force. We had a 3-year hitch. So they sent me to Bowling Air Force Base in Washington, D.C., all right, and to play football. That was the Air Force's team then, but we had to have side duty. Well, we won the National Service Championship. 10 of our starting 11 guys already played a year of pro football, so we had a good team. We won the National Service title. But we had to have main duty, my duty, and I was blessed to be in President Eisenhower's Honor Guard. And I was in the Honor Guard, and I was responsible. How many of you are military veterans? I'm sure, there you go. How many of you watched President Bush's funeral? Well, I guarantee I did, because having been in President Eisenhower's Honor Guard, I watched the whole thing. I watched the pallbearers, the whole command situation, and it all came back to me, because I was the officer in charge of Air Force funerals at Arlington Cemetery. We would they pull more now, but we pulled maybe 30 funerals a week. And over 2.5 years of doing that, I was the officer in charge of thousands of Air Force funerals at Arlington. And when I watched Bush's funeral, it all come back. I remember every command that those Honor Guard gave and those pallbearers. It just brought tears to my eyes, because I remembered every bit of it. I remember, you know what I mean, I just say, Honor Guard, attention, hood. And I'll tell you, looking at it and watching it on TV just brought so much to me. And I can remember pulling ceremonies at Washington National Airport with President Eisenhower. He would meet an incoming dignitary, a prime minister, a president of a country, and he would stand, we're waiting for the plane to come in, maybe from you and I, and he'd say to me, "Good morning, Lieutenant, how are you?" I said, "Fine, sir." He said, "Beautiful morning, isn't it?" I said, "Yes, sir." Man, I felt so honored that President Eisenhower was dozens and dozens of times. We would chat, standing there for 5 minutes before the plane come in. It was such an honor. And then when he was inaugurated at the Mayflower Hotel in Washington, D.C., in those days they only had one inaugural ball, and we got a phone call in our honor guard office at Bowling, and they said, President Eisenhower wants you to be the officer in charge of his 44 enlisted man cordon around his presidential box at the inaugural ball. I said, "Me?" And they said, "Yes." He remembered, he just saw my name tag, he knew I played football there at Bowling. And I was so honored he selected me to have 11 enlisted men from each of the 4 services, and I was in charge of them. When, I'll never forget, I could hear the sound when he walked in with Mamie Eisenhower and they played that Hail to the Chief, you know, da, 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 da. Oh, man, it touched me. And I remembered all that. And I said, how honored can I be? And when the ball was over, they had Lawrence Welk and his orchestra and Fred Waring and his orchestra. And I got to meet them, got to shake hands with the Champagne lady, Alice Lawn, and Lawrence Welk and all that. And I said, none of this would have happened if I wouldn't have joined the Air Force ROTC at Pitt. And I was just so, so grateful. And then I got out a little bit early. I had a 3-year hitch. I got out 5 months early to go to Green Bay with the Green Bay Packers. But then when I was done playing pro football, I wanted to keep my military going. So I joined the Air Force Reserve out here at the Greater Pitt. And I served there for 17 years. Now I got my 20, 3 active and 17 out at the Greater Pitt. And I was so grateful. I was, at that time, I was a major. I was a commander of the aerial port. We dropped paratroopers and equipment, and we'd fly cargo all over the world. We'd go to Vietnam, fly cargo to Tonsanut Air Force Base over there. And I said how blessed I was. I was teaching school, coaching football, high school and college athletic director, and I'm able to be in the active reserves at the Greater Pitt and still travel around the world and get involved in all these missions, including going to Vietnam. So I was so grateful that I was able to put that part of my military life into my playing pro football. Now we'll switch gears a little bit and go to the pro football, the National Football League. I see you guys standing here pledging the allegiance, singing the national anthem. I wish some of those hammerheads in the NFL would do that. These guys, I like to give them a knuckle punch, some of those guys. But anyway, Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, I know you heard about those guys. I would like to say to both of them, I don't know if you guys read the Bible, but maybe you should. Because you know what the Bible says? In James chapter 3, verse 14, be content with your wages. That's what the Bible says. Be content with your wages. Well, those guys ought to be content with their wages. Believe me. If I see them, I used to get out and practice every Friday when Dick LeBeau here, Dick LeBeau is my best friend. I used to go to practice theater during the season every Friday, closed workout, nobody allowed in. I watch practice and go and have lunch with LeBeau. But I would like to be down there someday, and I used to talk to Antonio all the time. He always had that grin. I said, man, you're always grinning, Antonio, and he'd smile. But I wish he'd, being honest, I wish he'd wake up. But anyway, I think about those guys, and I think about this when I started with Green Bay. And you can imagine, the #1 draft choice in all of pro football that year, 1957, was Paul Hornung. He was a Heisman Award winner, All-American out of Notre Dame. #1 choice not only for Green Bay, but the whole league. He got a $12,000 contract and $2,000 to sign. I got $7,500 and $500 bonus. I thought I was a millionaire. Well, that $500 paid for my whole wedding. Would you believe that? 1957? I got a 5-piece Polish band from Priatko for $25. Each meal cost $1.25, and it paid for my whole wedding, including our honeymoon to Williamsburg, Virginia. $500. My mom was a widow. She said, "Billy, I've never seen that much money on one check in my life." $500. I said to Dick LeBeau one day, I said, "Dick, how much you signed for?" He said, "Bill, I got $7,500. I said, "That's what I got." I said, "How much bonus?" He said, "I got $500. I said, "So did I." Man, we thought we were millionaires. But the relationships, the bond, playing with Bart Starr, Paul Hornung, all those guys, that's what it was all about. Not the money, the bond we had. Well, I made the Green Bay team as a rookie, but after the season started, this linebacker who was all pro had an Army National Guard tour. He wasn't due out till January, but he got out in September. He's a linebacker like I was, and they were going to put me on what they call the taxi squad. They call it the practice squad now. They keep 18 guys on a practice squad. We played, they kept one guy, and that was going to be me. The first guy gets hurt, the coach said I'll move up, but you had to clear waivers. So when they put me on waivers, Buddy Parker picks me up, and I come to the Steelers. I'm happy, it's my hometown. I said, how can I complain? My buddy Fran Rogel, if you remember Fran Rogel, Jack Butler, Ernie Stotner, L.B. Nickel, George Tarasovic, John Rager, all those guys. John and I were Pitt teammates. Now I'm together with those guys, and I'm happy that I'm back in my hometown. But the bottom line is, and I wish Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell would see this, because the season already started with the Steelers, they had to prorate my contract, and I'd get paid by game. A rookie got $5,500 then. So this is what I made. Here's the actual contract signed by the Steelers and Bert Bell, who was the commissioner then. I made $416.66 a game. $416. There it is, in writing. I said, what do I care? I'm playing in my hometown, right? Now, do you think those guys would play, any of those guys today would play for $416 a game? But I was so grateful because I'm with my teammates. Then I became doubly grateful when in 2012, the Steelers celebrated 80 years of Steeler football, and they picked 19 guys to represent the Steelers. All the big guys, Joe Green, Swan, Stallworth, Hines Ward, Jerome Bettis. And they picked me to represent the Steelers in the 50s. I was so grateful. I said, they had a big banquet for us the night before the Baltimore Raven game on Sunday night. They gave us our game jerseys, introduced us at halftime. And I said, how blessed can I be? I'm from North Priatko, my hometown. The Steelers select me to represent the 1950 decade on this 80th anniversary. And to me, that was one of my greatest football honors to be a part of that. And I remember we took a photo in the locker room, and Joe Green says to me, Bill, I want you to sit next to me. I said, why, Joe? Because I'm the oldest. And Andy Russell said, I thought I was the oldest. I said, no, Andy, I got you beat. I'm the oldest. So I said, Joe said, no, I want you to sit next to me. And I know why he did. Because the night before at the banquet, they had me, 10 of us speak. And I didn't speak long, but the only thing I said when I ended it was, I said, we didn't make much money, but we were grateful, and I was grateful to put on the black and gold and play for a wonderful man like Mr. Art Rooney, the chief. And they gave me a standing ovation. And I said, what did I say? And I know why Joe wanted me to sit next to him, because he felt the same way. He said, Bill, it was an honor to play for the Chief, and I'm glad you said that. And I said, well, Joe, that's the way I felt. Well, now I end up going to play for Paul Brown with the Cleveland Browns. And I want to tell you what a great coach he was and a great man, Paul Brown. And I was so blessed to play for him. And he said the same thing as Johnny Reed said, I love coaching football, but my greatest joy is to teach Sunday school at my Presbyterian church. Paul Brown says Paul was Methodist. And he said, boys, or you can call us boys, here he called us men. He called us guys. He always said, guys. He said, I love football, coaching, but my greatest joy is teaching Sunday school at our Methodist church. I said, what an irony. Here's my high school coach said the same thing. Here's the greatest coach ever, I thought, Paul Brown, saying the same thing. Well, to show you how Paul was, he got me my job at Robert Morris College. I didn't know it, but he called the president to recommend me, unknown to me, and the president was a Paul Brown fan, and he, because of that, he told Human Resources hire me, never met me, President Sewell, because Paul Brown called and recommended me. But anyway, my first year at Cleveland, talking about salary and Antonio Brown and Bill, I made $7,500 my first year at Cleveland. So the second year, I go up in January, sit in his office at Cleveland Stadium for my next year contract. No agents, nothing, never heard of that, just man to man. I sat down in his office. He looked at me like this. He said, you got 75 last year, you're getting 8 this year. I said, 8? That's a $500 raise. I'm from North Braddock. Ooh, I said, I better sign before he changes his mind. I get a $500 raise. I mean, that's how grateful we were. But to show you, if Paul Brown was coaching today, he would tell Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown to hit the road. You know why? Here's an incident I can recall like yesterday. Lou Groza. Lou Groza was a great offensive lineman, let alone a great place kicker for Paul Brown. He's in his 17th year with Cleveland. Paul Brown had the theory and philosophy, everybody was treated the same. He doesn't care if you were Jimmy Brown, you were Lou Groza, you were a rookie, everybody was treated the same. So we're in practice one day to give you an idea of what he meant and how strict he was with that. We're in the middle of a workout, and Lou is pass protecting. Never forget it, he's pass protecting against Paul Wiggin. And Wiggin gets by him. And Paul Brown says in that voice his, run it again. They run it again. Lou sets up to pass protect. 17-year veteran, all pro. Paul Wiggin beats him again. And Paul Brown says, you can hear a pin drop. He said, Lou, if you can't get the job done, we'll get somebody that can. Man, you could hear a pin drop, huh? 17 years all pro, he didn't care. Everybody was treated the same. Antonio Brown for Paul Brown he'd be gone. But he was the first one and the only one, Paul Brown, to give players intelligence tests. Nobody else did that in the National Football League. He gave every player at camp intelligence test. He always said, I want to find out who I have to work with the most. That's what he would say. Well, I got to say one other thing about Paul. He had a system of cutting players that was hard to believe and unusual. We played 6 preseason games in those days. We just finished our 6th preseason game, our 5th and 6th, out on the West Coast against the Rams and the 49ers. We're coming back to Cleveland on a plane after the game against the 49ers, and we knew they only keep 35 guys then, 35 players. And we knew we had 38 guys. So 3 guys had to be cut. Everybody knew that. We're on a plane, and Paul gets on the intercom on a plane. He says, will the following 4 men report to Cleveland Stadium office Monday morning? Everybody knew what that meant. Those were the guys who were going to get cut. And he called my name. I said, oh, man. I said, I had 2 good games against the 49ers and the Rams, and yeah, I'm going to get cut, but it's tough business. I know that. I'm sitting with Milt Plum, our quarterback. And I said, and Milt says, don't worry about it, Bill. I said, oh, come on, Milt, it's easy. You're the quarterback here. You're not cutting you. I says, you heard him. He said, don't worry about it. That's all he said. I'm down. Monday morning comes. We come to Cleveland. Willie McClung was one of them. Willie was my Steeler teammate. We go up to the secretary in Cleveland Stadium office. She hands everybody an envelope. It was a check for your transportation back home. And I'm, teed off and got a heavy heart and all that. So I didn't even bother to take the envelope, and the secretary says to me, why don't you take the envelope? I said, what are you, a sadist? I said, I don't need that envelope. Tell me I'm cut. Come on. She said, well, take it. Open it up. So I'm walking out, and I did. And it said, report to League Park for practice at 10 o'clock. That's where we practiced at League Park in Cleveland. I said, what? I'm going to practice. But it dawned on me. And Milt Plum told me the story. He said, Paul does that every year. They got 3 guys to cut. He'll call 4 names, but I wouldn't dawn on me. He called 4, and one of them won't be cut. He said he did that with Rich Kreitling one year, who was our #1 draft choice. He got his name on the intercom, and he almost fell out of the plane. He said, I'm a #1 draft choice, I'm being cut. But I go to practice at League Park, and I'm suiting up, and I'm sitting in my stall right next to Walt Michaels. Walt was our defensive team captain. And he just grinned. And I said, Walt, and then just about then Paul Brown comes back. He stops and he stares at me. He says, you have to be made of the firmer stuff. He would do that on purpose. And that was his pet expression. Guys, you want to be champions, you've got to be made of the firmer stuff. Just like Johnny Reed said, boys, you got to grit your teeth. I said, and that Paul Brown put me through that. And he did it every year with other players unknown to us. And I said, what a man. I said, he treated everybody the same. Like I said, Antonio Brown would be out the door, and Paul Brown was coaching. Well, 2 of my teammates that I was grateful for to be at Cleveland with, 2 names you know, Dick LeBeau, who is my best friend to this day. He and I were Cleveland Brown roommates and teammates 60 years ago. We walked into the training camp room. He said, I'm Dick LeBeau from Ohio State. I said, I know who you are, #4 draft choice. I told him who I was. Since that day, he's been my best friend, Dick LeBeau. We're going to talk tonight. We talk every week. He lives down near Cincinnati now. But Dick, you'd have to know the man. Dick LeBeau was so well loved by the Steeler team here. When I used to get out of practice every one of the guys, Aaron Smith, Brett Kiesel, Casey Hampton, Troy Polamato, Ike Taylor, Jim Farrier, all of them. I got to be close to all the guys, and they loved Coach LeBeau. They'd always say, we just love Coach LeBeau. And that's, in pro football, you don't see guys that love their coaches, believe me. It's not that way. It's a tough, tough business. But Dick has an expression that I love. He says, football is like life. You play every down as hard as you can till there's no downs left. Then the good Lord says it's time to come home. That's Dick's favorite expression. I love that. And I got to tell you this about Dick, then I'll tell you about Chuck Noll. This is a story that I told this to Jerry Dulac one day, the sports writer for the Post. I said, don't print this, Jerry. I said, Dick won't like it. He said, no, I won't print it. It's a classic. When Dick and I were teammates in Cleveland, we played, like I said, 6 preseason games. We're playing the Chicago Bears in the last preseason game at the Akron Rubber Bowl in Akron. The last one, same thing, 38 guys. Got to cut 3 to get down to 35 limit. Well, Chicago, the Bears had a great receiver named Harlan Hill. I don't know if you ever heard of him. Harlan Hill, he's about 6'5", he could run a 40 and 4.3, big guy, but he could catch. Well, it was in the 4th quarter, Harlan Hill runs against Dick a hook and go pattern. Hook and go means the receiver runs down about 20 yards, turns around, then takes off and just heads straight down the field. It's called a hook and go. The Bears run a hook and go against Dick. Harlan Hill runs it, gives him the hook fake and goes, catches it for 6 points. Oh man, he's my buddy and I feel bad. I know they got to cut 3 guys. He comes to the sideline and Paul Brown, with that voice of his, he says, everybody knew he was going to run a hook and go except you. That's the way he said it. Man, he said, oh man. Well, 3 days later, Dick gets cut. What a blessing for him. He ends up playing 14 years with the Detroit Lions, and he's in the Hall of Fame. Now, the moral of the story is, Dick is in the middle of his career with the Detroit Lions. They're playing the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland Stadium. Paul Brown called every play. He was the only coach in the league that called the plays. He'd send in 2 messenger guards. One of them was Chuck Noll. With the play, everybody knew Paul Brown made the calls. Middle of the game, Dick's playing with Detroit. He picks off a pass. He intercepts, and he's tackled right in front of the Cleveland bench. Paul Brown's standing there. And he got up, and he smiled at Paul. He said, everybody knew you were going to call a hook and go. Oh, man. I said, Sherry Dulac and Ed Bouchette from the Post, when I told them that story at training camp, they said, that's a classic. I said, don't put it in the paper. Dick will kick me in the rear end. He didn't want people to know that. But that was a true story. And I said, what a great story. You know, that was a classic for the guys that really knew the game and knew Paul Brown, knew what was going on. I'm so grateful to Paul Brown. Like I said, he got me my job. I went to his funeral in Massillon, Ohio. He was so good to me. And then Chuck Noll. Now, before you guys leave today, I have this. Each one of you can take one. The owner of this newspaper said to me, Bill, it's on page 10. She said, will you write that story about Chuck Noll and Robert Morris University? And I said, you want me to write it? And she said, yes. I said, oh, I'll do my best. So I wrote the story, and they put it in her paper. It's a great, heartwarming story about the type of man Chuck Noll was and the type of man that what he did for the maintenance man at Robert Morris who died of brain cancer, and what Chuck did for him. It's a great story. You guys take it with you. You know, Noel lived here in Swickley. He lived on Grand Street. I told him, Chuck, it's ironic. I was born and raised on Grand Street in North Braddock. And I think Mary Ann, his wife, still comes up here. Sometime I think she works out here at the Y. But when I think of Chuck, I think of, number one, nobody knew this until they wrote a book about him recently, but we knew about it when he was a teammate. Chuck had epilepsy. He was epileptic. He had to take medication because he would have seizures, and he had to keep himself under control. Everybody say, how come Noel's so like this on the sideline? He never gets upset. Well, nobody knew it, but he has epilepsy, and he had to learn to keep himself under control. It was amazing. He played 7 years for the Browns, coached all those years, wins 4 Super Bowls, and he had epilepsy. Unbelievable. Well, I can remember to show you how intelligent Chuck was. We were at Cleveland at training camp. Paul Brown gave every offensive player had to take a test. They went into the room with all the offensive players, and they had to diagnose every offensive play. There was maybe 50 of them. Not only your position, but what every other guy does, the other 10. You had to know football, because you know what you would do. If you're a center, you know who you block on this particular play. But you had to write down what the other 10 did. Well, Chuck played offensive guard and linebacker. Some games he would use them at either position. So Chuck had to go into the offensive room with the offensive players, then go to the defensive room, and the defensive guys had to write every defense. It was about 30 of them. Not only what he did as a linebacker, but what the other 10 guys did on every defense. Chuck used to go in the offensive team room. He'd be out of there. The guys would look and say, gee, but he cribbing. Then he'd go to the defensive room, take the test, and come out. And the other guys, the offensive team, they're still in their room. The defensive guys, they couldn't believe it. None of us could believe it. Said, how does he do that? That showed how intelligent Chuck was. It was unbelievable. Just to show you how tough those tests were, nobody would say it. Jimmy Brown had a cheat sheet. He had all of them written on his forearm. Here, look. And they said, "You're cheating, Jim." He'd say, "Quiet." You know. But that shows you one other example of Chuck that reveals what he would do today with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. There was a receiver for the Steelers back in the late 80s. His name was Roy Jefferson. I don't know if you remember Roy Jefferson. They're at training camp, and I used to go up to camp, and I talked to Chuck all the time. And I saw in the paper the day before, Chuck traded Roy Jefferson to the Baltimore Colts. And he was a good receiver. I said, what's all that about? Well, I found out before I talked with Chuck the next day at camp, he pulled into Chuck Noll's parking spot at training camp. You know, he was like Antonio, you know, I can do what I want to do. He pulled in, you don't pull into Chuck Noll's parking spot. Anybody knew that. You know, that's disrespect for the head coach. And not only that, during the previous season, I used to watch the Steeler games, and Jefferson always had his jersey hanging out. It was always hanging out. With Paul Brown, never could you play in a game with your jersey hanging out. Never. One time, one guy did, and he'd have the equipment man go over. The equipment man go over to the guy and said, Paul said, get your shirt in. And boy, in it went. And I know Noel felt the same way, because he was a Paul Brown disciple. And I noticed that. And I said, Chuck's letting Roy hanging out with his jersey. Now I heard he parked in his parking spot. So I'm walking up the hill at training camp with Chuck. Jefferson's number was 82, and all I said was, Chuck, I see number 82 is gone. He said, Bill, I had enough of him. I had enough of him. That's what he would tell Antonio Brown today. I've had enough of him. Hanging on his shirt, parking in his parking spot. I had enough of him. That's how it was. Paul Brown was the same way. Dick LeBeau. I forgot about Dick LeBeau. Steelers are playing the Carolina Panthers down in Carolina. I'm watching the game on TV. They had a defensive back, the Steelers from Syracuse. I forget his name. He intercepts a pass right in front of the Steeler bench, and he's going by strutting like a drum major. You ever see a drum major, you know? He's going like this. So he comes over to the sideline. I saw LeBeau talking to him on a TV screen, and he was just, LeBeau never shoot out a player with real firmness. He was always like this, like Noel was. And I could see him going like this to that defensive back. So when I got home that night from Carolina, Dick and I'd always be on the phone about 11:30 at night, and I said, Dick, I'm watching the game this afternoon. I see what's his name picked off that pass and acted like a drum major going by your bench. And I saw you talking to him. What did you say to him? Dick said, all I said to him was, we don't do that around here. That's all he had to say. We don't do that around here. And he said, yes, sir. When the season ended, that defensive back was gone. He didn't mess around with him. He's gone. He and Bill Cowher got together and they said, put him on waivers. They wouldn't put up with it. What a difference today with these two guys with the Steelers. You know, it's all together different. Well, these are just some stories that I could write a book about Chuck Noll and Dick LeBeau and Paul Brown. They meant so much to me and still do in my life, particularly LeBeau. He's my wonderful, everybody has a best friend. Well, Dick LeBeau is my best friend. Yeah. And I'm grateful, in closing, I can say I'm grateful that I grew up in North Braddock. I'm grateful that I got a football scholarship to Pitt. I played in the NFL. I'm grateful for my wonderful military experiences, both active duty and here at the Greater Pitt. But the thing I'm most grateful for, and I have to say this because I feel this way, is my four kids. My four kids, two of them, my two sons are West Point grads. One of them served in Iraq 4 times. He's won all kind of medals, Bronze Star a couple times, the combat infantry. He was an infantry officer for 24 years. And come out of West Point. My one son to come out of West Point is disabled. He got banged up in the Army. He's in a wheelchair, 100% disabled. But David served 4 times. I'm proud of all 4 of my kids because they're committed Christians, all 4 of them. There's no greater feeling for a dad. And my wife felt the same way. My wife died of cancer 4 years ago. She was my saint. I went to North Braddock High School. She went to Braddock High School. We were rivals. But we were married for 57 years. And then the final thing that I'm most grateful for, because in my family, I get all my hope, all my strength, anything that I am and anything that I've been blessed with, I owe to my Lord and my Savior, Jesus Christ. Believe me, I owe everything to Him. I'm grateful for Him because I know that my family and I and all of us, when we believe in Him, will be together again in paradise, and it'll be beautiful. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for being here this morning to talk to you guys. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Bill. Bill, I've got a question for you.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. What was the backstory on Dick LeBeau leaving the Steelers?
Let me put it this way. Dick is the type of guy, he will never knock anybody or complain about anybody. He said to me, Billy, he always called me Billy, he said, I always thought I'd end my career with the Steelers. He said, I love Pittsburgh. The fans are so good to me. He said, I just love Pittsburgh. In fact, when he came back 3 weeks ago, when they honored the 2008 Super Bowl team at the banquet that night, about 500 people, when they introduced Dick, they gave him a standing ovation. He said, Bill, you warm my heart. He said, I love Pittsburgh, and to know that they still feel that way. But he said, it was a case, he wouldn't say this, but anybody knows it now. It was a case of where Mike Tomlin and Keith Butler were buddies. They coached together years ago, and he wanted to move Keith Butler up to the defensive slot. He thought Dick was getting up in there. He was 80 years old, he was 78 at the time, but he's a young 78, believe me. He looks like he's 60. He still golfs. He shoots 68 at Pinehurst. That's how good he is. But he knew that. And he said, Billy, I've been in the NFL 60 years. That's a long time as a player and a coach. I've seen it all. I understand it all. It's the way it is. It's a business. And he accepted it and moved on.
Okay, one other question. How big were the linemen back in the 50s? And yourself, what was your playing weight?
My playing weight is, I was bigger then. As an outside linebacker, I weighed 230, which was pretty good size. I always tell Jack Ham, you only weighed 224. I was bigger than you. And Lambert, he weighed 218. My buddy Joe Schmidt, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he weighed 216. But anyway, the linemen, there still were big linemen, like Big Daddy Lipscomb. You remember him? He was big. The guy, Brown from Detroit, the middle guard, he was about 310. So they had big guys, but if you were 270 or 280 then, that was, not as common. Now, 270, 280, all of them. They are bigger now, there's no question. They're not any tougher. Ernie Staudter weighed 240. And we always called him a small Joe Green because he handled a line of scrimmage like nobody could in that era. And he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He weighed 240, but man, he was tough. And so they're bigger today, maybe faster, some of them, but they had fast guys then. But they weren't any tougher, believe me. Those guys, I can vouch for it. They were tough. There were some guys. I always thought the best quarterback I played against was John Unitas. I thought he was the best, and Bart Starr. I was a teammate of his. I thought, and Roger Staubach. I think those guys were as good as anybody that's playing today. Jimmy Brown, I thought, was the best running back ever, even today. There wasn't anybody better than Jimmy, including Walter Payton and a whole bunch of other guys. But there wasn't anybody any tougher than Fran Rogel. I don't know if you remember that name. He was from my high school, my town. Bobby Lane said he wasn't the best running back in the NFL, but Bobby Lane said he was the toughest. And Fran was tough. And a lot of the guys were tough. Alan Amici was a great tough runner. And I hope that answers it.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I'm sure we have some questions here for Bill.
I notice you have a patriotic emblem on your sweater.
Yes.
I'm wondering if there's any special significance.
Well, it's special to me because it's the West Point emblem, duty, honor, country. And my son gave me this sweater. Both of my sons, I said, went to West Point. And they bought me this sweater, and I'm proud to wear it. And ironically, I had a sports writer come to my house to interview my son Dan, who's a West Point grad, who's disabled. And he wants to write a story about the relationship between my son Dan and Coach K, the Duke basketball coach. He's a close friend of ours. He invites Dan and I to a game at Duke University for 25 straight years. We met him 25 years ago at the 5-star camp at Robert Morris. Ever since then, he invites Dan and I. He's a West Point grad, and he loves that West Point bond. And so the reporter wants to write this story about the bond between Coach K and my son, and Dan told him to show you that West Point bond. When he first met Dan at Sewell Center at Robert Morris at the 5-star camp, never met Dan. He said, Bill, bring Dan out, I want to meet him. Dan was in a wheelchair, he got out. Coach K came over to him and he hugged him. He hugged him and he went like this. He said, Dan, we have that bond. We were on the long gray line together. That's the way he said it. He loves that West Point bond, Coach K. And that's why he takes to my son, because he's disabled and a West Point grad, yeah. So that's what it is. I have a jacket I wore today that says the same. On the back it says West Point. Then here it says USMA 84, 89. That's when my two sons graduated. So we have a great bond with West Point in our house, yeah.
Back in the 70s, I worked for Eugene Klein of the then San Diego Chargers football team, and he did not put up with any of this malarkey that's going on today.
Who was that? What put up?
Eugene Klein on the San Diego Chargers.
Okay.
I wanted to know your opinion of how you feel the NFL, the league, has handled this business about disrespecting the flag.
You know, a lot of us have said, how the heck did they ever let this get out of hand? You know why? In this, and I have it, you know, when I showed you this Steeler contract, it's a standard NFL contract. In it, on the back, it has club rules and NFL regulations. One of them says we have to wear coats and ties when we go on an away trip. Not only on the plane, in the hotel lobby, you had to wear coats and ties. It's in there. Well, in today's contract, it's in their contract that says they have to stand before the game on the sideline before the game and stand for the national anthem. It's in there. The union put it in there. It's in there. And it says, and they don't say they can or would be, they could be fined by their parent club. Okay? And all the commissioner had to do is say to that Kaepernick, look at your contract. Your own players union agreed upon it, and it's in there. You have to adhere to it, period. That's it. But he didn't have the guts to do it. He didn't want to rock the boat with the union, so next time they have negotiations, he can be on the better side with them. That's all it was. He didn't have the guts to enforce what it says.
Like you, I played ball in college. I was like you, I was a linebacker and a center.
You look like one.
My question is, what do you think of the CTE, and are we doing enough in football to protect and keep the game we love?
Well, Dick LeBeau said to me about a month ago, he said, Billy, you can't play defense anymore in the NFL. He said the rules are ridiculous. He said they've made the rules such that you can't, a defensive back and the linebackers, they can't do this anymore. And he said all the, helmet to helmet stuff, he said in the old days the guys tackled and hit the middle of the guy's chest with their helmet, no call. I mean, that was a normal football tackle. Now you can't do it. You can't even do that. I mean, not just helmet to helmet, but you can't even put your helmet into a guy's chest. And, that's football. It's a physical game. And Dick says you can't play defense anymore. It's tough. I think some of the rules have gone overboard, and they're not consistent. One game the guys call it this way, and the next game the officials call it the other way. I mean, sometimes they call defensive holding and pass interference. You've seen it. They barely touch a guy, and his flag is down. Other times, they manhandle him, and the flag doesn't go down. They're inconsistent in their calls, and it's the rules that cause all that inconsistency, and it's a physical game. I mean, there's a difference between purposely trying to maim a guy and do this and that, but when tackles, if you're hitting to tackle a guy, how in goodness gracious sake can you not hit a guy in the middle of his chest? That's, the old days, that was standard. Look, remember what Jack Lambert did to that Dallas Cowboy down in the Super Bowl in Miami. He grabbed him and threw him down. No flag, no nothing. Can't do that today, impossible.
Bill, I sense that you're quite religious. Did you ever teach Sunday school?
Me?
Yeah.
My daughters taught Sunday school, but I myself didn't. No.
Okay.
My daughters taught Sunday school, yeah.
But you read the Bible.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Chuck Noll's wife, Mary Ann, that's a good question. The reporter asked her one day, what was your greatest thrill? And the reporter thought she was going to say, oh, Super Bowl so-and-so, or this year or that year. And she said, my greatest thrill? It's my greatest joy, she said. And he said, what's that? He got his pen in him. She said, teaching CCD. Well, he didn't know what CCD meant. He said, well, what's that? In the Catholic Church, their Sunday school is called CCD. And she told him that. She said, teaching Sunday school in my church, because the Knowles were Catholic. And he said, oh, you know. So she said the same things. Teaching Sunday school was her greatest thrill.
Okay, we got another question here.
I want to take you to your Robert Morris days. Being an athletic director at a school like Robert Morris has to be really, really tough. And I would guess I'm going to say is, how can schools like that financially support the number of athletic programs that they have to conduct?
Okay, well, number one, I wasn't the athletic director, I was the assistant athletic director. Okay, yeah, you promoted me, I appreciate it. Now I got to get my back pay. Well, every school, naturally, that's the size of Robert Morris has that problem, but it's amazing the number of donors and the number of people who donate to the university that help offset that. And I think Marty works at Robert Morris. His son, Marty's a wonderful man, a wonderful friend of mine, and he knows that donors and businesses and other aspects of donors help to keep the program afloat, so to speak.
How big is the budget, if you can reveal that?
How big a budget?
How big is the budget for athletics at Robert Morris?
Well, I don't know what it is now. I really don't, because I retired in 1993.
What was it then?
What was it then?
Yeah.
Not as big as it is now. I know that. Yeah. But we managed. We got by. That's when they started football in 1993, when Joe Walton came. Yeah, and then the budget went up when they started football because basketball was the big sport. Then when they started football, the budget increased. Yeah.
When you were in the military stationed at Bowling and met President Eisenhower, did you happen to meet one of his pilots called Colonel Dunkelberg?
What was his last name?
Dunkelberg.
No, but I met one of his pilots who was from Braddock, okay, but I didn't meet him, no.
Thank you.
Did you ever happen to know Ray Malavasi by any chance?
Ray Malavasi, the coach.
Yeah.
I didn't know Ray personally, but a lot of my coaching and athletic friends were good friends of his.
Okay, yeah, he went to my high school in Clifton, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, I remember Ray Malavasi. He was a good coach.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Bill? Okay, one more.
I appreciate all your questions. You guys are the best, I'll tell you. You're what America's all about. We need more guys like you, believe me.
I want to go back.
Antonio Brown should have been here this morning. Well, I'll kick him in the rear end. Yeah, he'd have walked out.
I want to go back to your time when you were in the honor guard for President Eisenhower, and I wanted to bring up something that maybe you and maybe none of these other gentlemen are aware of. But every month, approximately 25 to 30 veterans are buried down at the cemetery of the Alleghenies, and they have no family. Nobody comes to bid their farewell. So the first Wednesday of every month, there's a ceremony held for those veterans. And I'm privileged to be in an honor guard for the Vietnam Veterans Incorporated of Pittsburgh. And last year, our month, I think, was October or November. This year, our month will be June. But every month, the first Wednesday of every month, there is a ceremony, and every one of those names is read aloud, and the honor guard is there, the color guard, and a rifle salute is given to them. I don't know if you're aware of that or not.
No.
That would be.
That's a heartwarming ceremony. That's wonderful they do that.
It is, and everybody is invited to it. I mean, this is open to everybody. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
I've attended funerals at that cemetery, and it's a wonderful cemetery, and it gives great homage to the veterans, yes. It's nice that you're part of that.
Okay, Bill, that wraps it up.
All right, thank you,
on time,
gentlemen.
11 o'clock.